Gran Turismo 6 was released December 6, 2013. This is seen as one last hurrah for the PlayStation 3 because over a week later, the PlayStation 4 would be released. I hate to say this, but I honestly didn't care about this one and had no intention on buying it because I initially assumed it was going to be on the PlayStation 4, and after seeing early gameplay footage, I thought there wouldn't be enough content to be worth paying full retail price. The only reason I have Gran Turismo 6 is because I got a Logitech steering wheel and it came bundled with the game. So yeah, I'm now reaching a point where I'm starting to lose interest in the Gran Turismo series, and my expectations for this one weren't extraordinary. But do I expect it to be a bad racer? Absolutely not. I do have it in my hands, so let's see if I'm wrong. Now before you play the game and decide to keep it up to date, whatever you do, don't download all the updates at once. If you do that, installation of the updates in-game will crash the PlayStation and make it virtually unplayable. What I did to get around the problem was download and install in-game one update at a time. For this review, the latest update is 1.22. In conjunction with all the updates, it adds around 30 cars, 10 events, and 2 tracks. You see, that's how DLC should be done. No extra cost. Just put it in the updates for free. Something that EA and Capcom should take note on. The intro cutscene is just a generic montage showcasing what it kinda looks like in-game, but if you update it, it has a new beginning showcasing the Ayrton Senna Institute. We'll get to why. Then it goes to that same montage, in 60 frames per second. Neat, huh? Now you know how all the Gran Turismo games begin with a complimentary intro cutscene like this, then you go to the main menu. In this, you're thrown onto Brands Hatch to learn the driving mechanics, reminiscent of V8 Supercars Race Driver on the PlayStation 2. Lots of racing games do this, so I'm okay with that. Then after you work it out, with the steering wheel of course, you're finally given credits to splash in a rather generous amount, 30,000, but there's a hook. You are forced to start with a Honda Jazz. Are you kidding me? It's not that I think the Honda Jazz is terrible, but not being able to choose your first car doesn't exactly set a good first impression. Fortunately, that first impression doesn't ruin the game as a whole, especially with the way it looks. Gran Turismo 5 had a pretty rushed look, which means they had a chance to own up to their mistakes, and even though it uses less disk space than the predecessor, it looks much better. Polyphony put everything they've got in the graphics department because it's one of the best looking games on the PlayStation 3. Once again, it runs at 1080p and 60 frames per second. Now even though they've increased the saturation, it looks more colourful, I still think it has a pretty empty and lifeless feel to it. Kinda like a brand new modern house. I mean, look outside the track, it's practically frozen stiff. Actually, I take that back, the spectators look a lot better on some tracks. I don't even know why I pay attention to that sort of thing. I should be paying more attention to the road. But if you look at the comparisons between these two, you can see that 6 looks more polished. It has enough graphical improvements from 5 to finally impress me. You gotta give credit where credit is due. If this came out on the PlayStation 4 and it looked exactly like this, not that many gamers would complain about the graphics. Who knows what Gran Turismo 7 will look like? No, I don't mean sport. And the cars have actual headlights. Sometimes. The only playable night event is Midnight Races, or at least the Mercedes-Benz Vision GT, which you get as a free car from an update, we'll get to that, has headlights that work. As for Night Masters, I don't even need to explain. Why didn't they just make the lights as powerful as any car? This may be a simulator, but being able to see should be a basic feature in any racer. All complaints about the music have been completely erased with the ability to add custom playlists. both in-game and menu, so technically you can use the menu music from Gran Turismo 3 and put it in this. I think my life is complete. As for the soundtrack itself, I don't know. I didn't even listen because I'd assume it'd be terrible, and all I thought about was using a custom playlist instead. From now on, this review will use the OST from the first 3 games. Bring it. The number of tracks has taken a big step forward. With the exception of the Top Gear test track, you have all the circuits from the 5th game, and more, including Silverstone, Spa, Willow Springs, Brands Hatch, Twin Ring Montague, Ascari, you know, the track that Top Gear did an episode on the German saloons, and Mount Panorama. They put an Australian circuit in this game. What took them so long? It's a very challenging one as well. And if you update the game, you'll also receive Red Bull Ring and Midfield Raceway. Oh, there are rally tracks too? Sorry, I forgot. There's only one GT mode event for rally cars and no brand new tracks either, which is why you won't be seeing much rally racing footage. Help me, Polyphony, I'm losing interest in that category. Still, with a grand total track count of 90, there'll be plenty of diverse online servers to search for. The emphasis on online racing is even bigger, and the next Gran Turismo game, Sport, is claiming to be offline friendly too, but Gran Turismo 6 gives you the impression that Polyphony are planning on making the series online only in the future. I think I know why Gran Turismo 6 is the only title in the series available on the PlayStation Network. It's the only one with online activity. Going off topic, the biggest problem with online orientated games in general is that the servers aren't going to be on forever. As we saw with Gran Turismo 5, the servers shut down in 2014, which means, theoretically, Gran Turismo 6 online servers will shut down in 2017, making way for Gran Turismo Sport to take over. It's just another cheap way for publishers to take your money. To play online, you have to keep buying the newest game. It's also why I've stopped playing the Call of Duty games a while ago, although there are more reasons than that. Only if you're 100% sure the servers are likely to be on for a really long time, like Quake and Trackmania for example, is online gaming a good thing. So enjoy it in this while it lasts. But regardless of how good it is online, offline gameplay will last even longer. Arcade mode is now in the Gran Turismo mode menu, a clear sign that they really don't care about it anymore, but at least everything's there: single race, time trial, drift mode, and 2-player. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if split screen multiplayer isn't in Gran Turismo Sport. About 90% of all tracks are instantly available, and you can select many fast cars without having to explore GT mode. There's enough content already unlocked to get high levels of enjoyment from Gran Turismo 6 on arcade mode alone. Good job, Polyphony, and that wasn't sarcasm. The Gran Turismo mode menu is very colourful and much easier to navigate. This feels a lot more linear than the first 5 games. It constantly holds your hand with endless tips, and the ranking system has been replaced with how many stars you earn on each event category, which we'll also get to. I assume they wanted Gran Turismo 6 to be different from the 5th. In some ways, I think it is. Racing gear was in the predecessor, but the reason I'm talking about it now is because there are plenty of customization options. My first intention was to make my gear as colourful as the menu, and as you can see when I race go-karts, mission accomplished. Team ColourShed, living up to its name. Once again, the number of cars has increased further, and has now reached the 1200 mark, even though 1000 of them are Honda Civics. Point being, reaching the 1200 mark meant adding even more of just the same car. Don't worry, there are obviously enough exotics and races to make up for it. When you're driving, this time, standard cars now have interiors, but without any detailing at all. Or maybe the sun is really bright outside. The number of premium cars has doubled in comparison to Gran Turismo 5. Some of the standard cars in GT5 like the Bugatti Veyron and Lamborghini Countach are now premium. I know these were PSP models, but having exotic cars as standard models in GT5 didn't make any sense. To be honest, having PS2 and PSP car models in any future Gran Turismo title doesn't make any sense either. Well. Long time no see. Your mind, purple Nissan Skyline GTR from 1997. Sunrise, sunset, circle of life is complete. In the menu, there's even a dealership selection where it gives the list of cars that fit in an event and categories. But do you know what the best part is? If you have enough credits, you can buy it at any time. Go under the stupid ranking restrictions. To celebrate the 15th anniversary of Gran Turismo, the car manufacturers created a series of concept cars made for this game. Now they've been doing this for a while now with Nike 2022 and Citroen GT to name a couple, but the quantity is taken to another level, and whenever a car design is complete, an update will make it available for purchase in Gran Turismo mode. Just be careful on what you purchase, as cars have a number rating the overall performance, which not only gives you an easier indication on what's a good car, but also stops you from making a race one-sided. It's starting to get tiring saying this about Gran Turismo, but the formula is exactly the same. Find events to race in to win prize money, cars, more challenging events, rinse and repeat. I admit, when I saw there were only 3 novice events, I was worried that the event count took an even bigger drop. But don't worry, there's actually more to do than in GT5, and despite the power cap, a bit easier too. The only disappointment is the lack of endurance events. Well, they're still sort of there, only they've replaced the hours with minutes like 24-minute Nürburgring for example, which means you can only get a few laps out of it. Thought you can get away from this? It's Gran Turismo. Of course not. You have to perform license tests to race in specific events. Now this is exactly like the first 4 games in the series, but you can't actually select a license until you reach a certain number of stars, as if the sadistic game designers have thought of everything. Wrong about the sadistic part I mean, because I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be saying this, but the way the license tests are set up is actually pretty good. The first license I got gold on every single test without even trying, and there are only 5 tests in a license. I can't believe what I'm witnessing. This game is better than Gran Turismo 5 based on the license tests alone. Also, you don't have to win every race to move on to the next category. Thank God for that, because that Night Masters event isn't even worth trying. Licenses also give you access to special events which have been completely changed. The Top Gear and World Rally Championship licenses have expired, but Nascar Events are still here. New special events include the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and with an update, an End Senna tribute where you put in a few time attacks recreating the Senna era of the 1980s. You get a lot of prize money completing these, and winning above bronze will give you his cars and racing gear. Oh, and before each time attack, you'll witness some history of this legendary driver. Apparently, a percentage of the sales revenue of Gran Turismo 6 go into the End Senna Institute. Sounds good to me. It's just a shame that Gran Turismo 6 is currently the worst selling title in the main series. Also, if you update this game, you get the Sierra Time Rally and a track 27 kilometers long. That's longer than the Nürburgring. Oh, what's that? The scope still ain't big enough for you? How about Lunar Exploration? What is this, Gran Turismo or Moon-based Alpha? I suppose in Gran Turismo 7 you'll be able to race against Reapers with the Normandy from Mass Effect. I can't deny Polyphony's ambition to try new things, however, because it's actually not that bad. Just unusual and very slow. So there's a ridiculous amount of events to do, but that's to be expected. What matters most is how cars drive. When you're using a racing wheel, the driving is the most realistic I've ever played. Like braking while cornering or too hard, you just slide out. This game can't be more true to the slogan. But unlike, let's say, Gran Turismo 4, it's somehow fun. This does an excellent job simulating the feel of driving a car in real life. But if you're a bigger fan of the first 3 games, you definitely won't take kindly to that. If you really suck at this, you can always change the settings to your preference. Only when you take it seriously and get really far into Gran Turismo mode, it becomes frustrating to the point where every single corner might as well have this sign next to them. car damage still doesn't affect the performance, but visually at least it's a lot more obvious that I'm a really aggressive driver. But then I need to be because the AI hasn't improved. Yes, they recognize you on the track, but as you can see, they're prone to pit maneuvering you. I didn't mention this in my Gran Turismo 5 review. They brake right in front of you without notice about 90% of the time. And finally, you start at the back of the line without a chance to qualify. Now the first 4 games were like that, and I did say in my review of Gran Turismo 1 that qualifying was pointless because you passed them all in the first corner. But there were only 6 cars on the track. In Gran Turismo 6, the number of opponent drivers can reach double digits, and with some events beginning with a rolling start, when you have to pass that many cars in just a few laps, aggressive driving is literally the only option. But looking at the number of stars I picked up, it won't be enough to hold you back from winning, so I'll let them off the hook for that. When you're actually driving, Gran Turismo 5 and 6 are way too identical to differ from. Gran Turismo 6 reminds me of Gran Turismo 2. What you have is the exact same game as Gran Turismo 5 with a lot more content and polish, but more than enough to be worth it. And like I said before, there are practically no microtransactions. All extra content can be downloaded through updates, which is incredibly convenient. Gran Turismo 6 is simply better than 5, which is why it gets an 8.5 out of 10. I would say it's even better than Gran Turismo 4. I'm glad I was able to give it a chance after my initial thoughts because it's definitely a racer worth purchasing for the PlayStation 3 today. Because like any title in the series, it's really cheap. My interest in Gran Turismo has increased again after playing this. The critic numbers say that 5 is better, but if you have a PlayStation 3 and want my advice, I would get Gran Turismo 6 over 5. The Gran Turismo series has come a long way since the early years of the first PlayStation. From an unexpected success to one of the best-selling video game franchises of all time, averaging nearly 10 million copies sold per game. And after reviewing the entire series, the home console versions at least, the first 3 games in the series will never be topped. Yet Sony treat these masterpieces the same way Nintendo treat their CDI games, as if they don't exist. I bet if I met Gran Turismo creator Kazunori Yamauchi and asked him about Gran Turismo on the PlayStation, he'd be like, never heard of it. I know I talk about it a lot, and for me it's not a big deal because I've got all 6 games, so it's pointless buying them again off the PlayStation Store. But it's the principle of Sony acknowledging the beginnings of one of their staple franchises. Every Gran Turismo title defined a PlayStation, and whatever console you own, 1 to 4, you're not a true PlayStation gamer if you don't know Gran Turismo.